All right. Thank you for joining us. This is our first one. If you are watching us, you have fallen into the parent trap and have obviously Googled or YouTubed some way to deal with your aging parent. And we have worked with a lot of aging parents, so this is why we put this together. My name is Kate Johansen. This is Milaina West, my partner with Senior Transitions Team. And we are working on a whole community of people that are dealing with aging parents and how to go through that process.
Yeah, we'd like to say that we have all the answers, but we probably don't. But through the course of several episodes, we might get you what you need. Quite
We'll
possibly.
definitely research
Yeah.
it. Yes, we are researching as we go along and trying to make the transition as smooth as possible. I'd like to thank Neo Mortgage that let us film in their studio today. Amazing lender. So if you're looking to purchase a home, Tim's your guy, Tim Humphrey. But yeah, thank you to them. And again, our business is Senior Transitions Team.
All right.
All right, are
Let's
you
do
ready?
this, babe.
I think our big question is like, how do you know that it's time? Like I've gone to Father's Day like over the last week, and like I saw a difference in my parents, or like what are the things that are coming up that you're like, is it time? Like, how do you know?
Yeah, I've had I by the time typically we get involved, I feel like we are way past the point of you asking that question, right? So
Yeah.
I think really figuring out what the questions, what the things to look for are really important. Such a, I hope we get to edit some of this. Where do I want to go with this talk track? So I think it is a really valid question. A lot of times, at least for me, when I was talking to my parents about things that were happening, planning that was happening, they completely avoided the question, which made me realize that that we needed to ask the question more and more often. And so,
No, I think okay, good question would be, how are you and I qualified to have any advice on this, right? And the answer is both of us real estate agents, a lot of investment, like doing flipping and working with a lot of seniors that are aging through way past where they need to be in independent living, right? And so we've walked into so many different situations of seniors that have massive deferred maintenance on their house, deferred maintenance on their own body. I mean, deferred maintenance all over the place. They're not clean anymore. And it's like, you know that there is some kid that's living in another state and they're calling their parent and they're saying, they're just chatting about the weather on a Sunday, right? And they're not involved in seeing like exactly what their parent is living with. I think that that's a huge situation that I run into. And so it's hard to know like when it is time, right? And so the answer to this is like, you don't know when it's time. You start now. Like if you lived if you had a Tommy Hilfiger windbreaker in middle school, it's probably time to talk to your parents about aging right now, because that's yeah, no, I mean, if I could go back on like all the things, that I'm like, yeah, if you like had, a
my Jordache jeans. Yeah,
yeah, no, if
collection.
you like Sean Kemp
Yeah.
basketball shoes, like it is time to talk to your parents about aging, because the truth is like there's no advantage into dealing with the house when it's on fire, right? It's to prevent the house from burning down. And I think a lot of that comes down to having the conversation with your parents. And there's so many different levels of this that it is, right? So it's like having obviously protecting the house, which you and I are real estate agents and investors, right? And dealing with parents that have like, I mean, massive deferred maintenance, right? They've let the roof rot in and
Yeah, it's almost
they're not telling anybody about.
totally. It's like to the point of no return. And that is where I think my involvement with seniors, like early on in making sure that they keep the value of the property, because what really happens is by the time the deferred maintenance has happened, we are at such a low level of income that can be brought in for their level of care that we are looking at Medicaid spend down and other avenues to pay for care. So the importance of having the conversation and knowing when is so incredibly important. And you, if you are an out of state person that is, calling your parents, there better be somebody that needs to come by. Or the conversation maybe is like, how do I get my parents to move where I am?
Right.
Or are you willing and capable of moving there even temporarily to figure out what the situation is with your parents? Because otherwise, the calls that I typically get, and I don't know about you, are, hey, my parent needs to be released from the hospital. They have nowhere to go because they are can't go back home. It's deemed unsafe.
Yeah.
And that is the worst call because it's essentially like your parent or whoever is laying in the bed in the middle of the hallway at a hospital and there's nowhere to go and you've got social workers and everyone calling you every single day. When are you going to pick up your parent?
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, they don't want to keep them, and they don't want to put them anywhere either. So I mean, that's the hard part. Nobody's coming to save you at the end of the day, and that's what people don't like. Nobody's coming to like hand you a memo that's like, "Hey, your parent is aging. You need to address this." It really is all on you to like see that that's happening, or a sibling. I mean, I would tell people, I'm like, if I'm 42, right? If you're my age, it's just the same thing as making friends with your kids' friends, right? That's how you kind of understand like the social circle that your kids are in, what's going on with them, is that like, you know who their friends are, you know who the parents are, that kind of a thing. And same thing goes for your senior parent too, right? That it's like, make friends with their neighbors, make friends, have somebody that's keeping an eye on them, because I think that that's probably the most like detrimental thing that I see in seniors, is that nobody's keeping an eye on them and they're just out there being wild. Like I went on a lead. Another agent actually sent it to me as a Redfin agent, and she was like, "Hey, I met with these people. I don't even know how to help them because that's the house is only worth this much and they owe this much, and like she needs to get into, they had so many things going on." And ultimately, like, it was the saddest thing because one, you had this older man. He was actually in very good health and he actually had long-term disability insurance, and thank God some angel, right? Like basically was like, "Yep, I'll utilize your long-term disability insurance," but ultimately she was caring for the wife in the home that had like advanced stage, dementia for sure. And she was diagnosed with Parkinson's, but a lot of her diagnosis was really like, she believed that there was a squatter that was living in their garage that kept on ordering all this stuff from Amazon and was having it delivered. And it was, I mean, there was no squatter in the garage. It was actually her that was doing it. And it was just wildly confusing for the husband. And in the midst of all of this, they decided that they needed to upgrade their windows. And they hired a very well known company here in Western Washington that probably has the best advertising and door knockers you've ever met. And they charged these people $220,000 to replace the windows in their house
Disgusting.
and like peel off like what was like aging siding on the back of the house. One side of the house, they resided one side of the house and replaced windows for $220,000. And I know that these people have kids that are living out of state, and they probably just don't know that their parents were like getting so swindled by this company and felt like that was their only option, right? And it's the other thing is like, so are these kids talking to their mom that thinks that there's a squatter in the garage that doesn't really exist, that is buying all this stuff on Amazon? Or are they talking to their dad who is like protecting mom at all costs and won't say what's actually going on, right? And so he's like, "Oh, weather's great. Things are going well. Got an eye appointment this week." He's not saying what's really going on. I think that's a big thing that you get into with couples.
I think you made up a really good point about like, with your kids, like as your kids are growing up, right? You're like talking to the parents. Like a huge major thing, especially in the senior community, is they do talk to their neighbors. They usually, it is their sense of community, right? Because they have isolated themselves in such a way that the only people that they will talk to is the neighbors when they're saying hello, walking in and out of the home. So having a conversation with the neighbor is probably, and even just like a text exchange of phone numbers is like a really good place to start if you are not available or close enough by where you can have these conversations. Secondly, financially, let's talk about financially speaking. At a certain point, right? And this is always, I feel like the hardest conversation to have with your parents is there should be, some helpful oversight should we say? Like, are you, can you have, do you have access to bank statements? Do you have access to these things that you can kind of start seeing some alarm bells of Amazon every other? And in fact, Amazon is such a common one because subscriptions, like, the tag button for the subscriptions happen, they don't even know it's happening. I mean, I had a home where the client had over, I would say, 2 years worth of liquid cat food, like the kind that's in the bag, yeah, that you rip apart, and like so much kitty litter that you could literally pave a concrete
Oh,
area of, I was like, how am I going to use all this? I'm like, well, there's oil removal at some other places that we need to make
yeah.
from old cars. Like, we'll just throw it all on there. I mean, it's shameful, and also just the amount of money and waste that could have been used for the proper care. So, just though I think financially,
Well, I mean, you even think about like all the scams. I mean, even my boyfriend's mom, somebody approached her and was like, "We've changed the water district in the area that you live in, and we need a new credit card number."
yeah,
And so she ended up giving, and then I think it came down to like, she's probably watching this and she's like, that's not how that went. But I mean, similar kind of situation, and that like, she realized, she's like, oh no, like, I think I just got scammed. And so like, she ended up like going and like backtracking and making sure that all of their stuff was safe. But I mean, her husband has, early signs of dementia or Alzheimer's, and so like she's really the one that has to like control everything in it. And I mean, she's super bright and super on top of it and like very technically savvy, and still like all it took was somebody saying like, we've changed your water district. Oh, you don't want to get your water shut off, right? Or it's, you get somebody that's like, oh well, we need a credit card number to have a package delivered. I mean, it's so easy for these scammers now, and it's they just don't know, right? And nobody's keeping track.
yeah, it's really hard, right? Because you don't want to be sitting there like hovering. And also, let's not talk about the fact that maybe that's just not the job that you want to do. Maybe the relationship with your
No, suddenly being a parent to your own parent
right.
is not very fun. There's a lot of grief in it, right? No, the other thing to consider too is that I think you have parents that, I mean, again, I'm 42 years old. $1 million is a lot of money to our parents. Like, if they're like, man, I put into my Roth, I put in my 401k. They were like, they were good, and they were savers, they were investors. They've used the cottage cheese containers to save all of their food. They won't spend money on a pair of shoes more than once a year, kind of thing. They drive the same car that's got, it's a Honda. It's got 200,000 miles on it, right? But like, they think $1 million goes a long way in this economy, and unfortunately it just doesn't, right? So if you get diagnosed with something that's like memory care, I mean, you're looking at $10,000 a month at least for somebody's care, right?
At least.
At least. So unless you have a long-term disability care option that you've selected into, and a robust one at that, because a lot of the ones that I've heard about, right, people have invested in them and they're not paying out hardly any of the necessary, because it was set up, let's say it was set up like 10 years ago. The cost of care has gone up so much that like it hasn't really caught up to what today's standards are. And so you might have those kinds of things in place, but like $1 million does not go a long ways when you're trying to keep somebody that's like, I mean, my mom was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia at the age of 59. She lived for 10 years after that. And if it was in a memory care facility, that would have been at $9,000 a month on the minimum. That's like up in Skagit in a very smaller, like they share a bedroom place. That doesn't go very far. Like $1 million doesn't go very far for 10 years at $10,000 a month. I think I'd have to do the math.
It doesn't. I think when you're thinking about all these things too, it's like the question of time. Like, if you're sitting here researching this right now and you're coming across this, you're probably past the point of time, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's ready.
Well, and you're also likely the only sibling in the bunch that's actually like doing something to take.
Exactly. Yeah, which is fun. And then I think, like we're trying to answer the questions of like when, right? I think starting as soon as possible, like, is the win. And then lining things up financially, medically are important. I don't know what the first, like for me, some of the first questions are when I'm like speaking with clients is, do you have a medical power of attorney? Do you have a financial power of attorney? You should know too that you're not giving away all of your decision making process. This is for an emergency. Like, what happens if you fall? What happens if something happens? Like, there needs to be somebody there that can take charge and care for that. So just like thinking through, I'm trying to think of financially speaking, right? That's the first part of it. Then you've got your what else should you be looking for, right? So is the home properly is there ramps? Is it properly positioned to have, shower grab bars? Like, is are the hallways wide enough? Are we living in a single story versus a two-story home, right? Have we noticed, like, do we have hip problems? Do we have knee problems? Do we have the right, care equipment that's available? Also, what is the current state of the inside of the home? We've talked a lot about exterior deterioration and maintenance, but, and this is an uncomfortable conversation, but like, what is the continence level of your parent currently? Like, are we dealing with that? Because that alone, with bodily fluids and everything else, causes major damage to the property and also is a clear indication that this person needs to have regular care. So then what do you do, right? Where do you go from there? What would be your advice? Like, if you're like having if somebody is coming to you and they're like, hey, Kate, okay, I'm at this point. I need to find care. I'm not really sure what to do. We're in this situation, right, where we've got a house that is got a little bit of deferred maintenance. Maybe it's not terrible. And maybe they're still financially handling things. We've got a little bit of money, maybe not a million. Maybe we've got $500,000 in the value of the house and nothing else. What are you saying to people?
I mean, honestly, they need to sit down with an elder care attorney at this point. It comes down to, like, are they married? Are they not married? Right? There's so many other like factors into it. But I think the first step is really to sit down with like a good elder care attorney. And to be honest, like when I was going through this with my dad, I interviewed a handful of them. And it's like, you just told me for $250 an hour what I could have, like the top Google results of what I could Google, right? They were not like strategists, right? So they were like, well, I'm just going to tell you what the laws are, not how to plan your life around what the laws are, right? Or like what the different metrics are for Medicaid, And that's the thing is like you think, hey, I'm sitting on $1 million. I don't need Medicaid. You will, if you are
Need Medicaid.
if you are like, yeah, you will likely need Medicaid, right? Especially unless you're a centurion, right? That's the person that lives to like 100. I mean, you can live a long time with, especially Alzheimer's and dementia, and be completely healthy and still need that expensive care. And so, yeah, again, you could have a $1 million property and you still need a lot of that. The other part is that you get into like the tax ramifications of it too, that it's like suddenly I'm selling a house that's $1 million and your capital gains, especially if you're, a widow, right? Are insane. You're paying capital gains on $750,000. And so there's ways to preserve the wealth and like coming up with a strategy ahead of time rather than when you are sitting with a broken hip in a hospital room is a lot better, than having to rewind time. You wish you could rewind 5 years because that's really what it comes down to with Medicaid is like understanding how it works down the.
I literally just had this conversation with my mom. I was like, she's not that old. She's like 67. I don't know what it is. I can never remember my mom's age. Like, she was like 58 for like forever.
I mean, my kids will probably say the same thing about me. Like, she's just 42. Like next year, like she's.
Yeah, she's mid-60s, but we're having this conversation. She's relatively healthy. She works at Southwest Airlines 80 hours a week. I mean, she's doing a good job, right? She's got her nice house. She's taking care of things. And she's like, I'm going to leave all this to you and your sister. I've got all these life insurance policies. And I'm like, great. But do we have a trust in place? No. Okay. Do we have a Medicaid? There is a Medicaid trust, right? And that to your point, you have to have 5 years prior. So if something were to happen, if she were to come down with dementia or Alzheimer's or early stages of it, like it is a way for you to preserve the property in order to take care of your parent. Otherwise, when they want it all in good faith. They're like, I'm gonna leave this to you and your sister, so that yeah,
All this wealth.
have to worry about anything except that Medicaid is like, knock, knock, knock. I'm going to go ahead and take the house because I have given you the worst care possible. And thank you. I'm picking up my gold now. Yeah. Bye bye. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the reality.
Well, then on the other end of things, I think that families are wildly unaware of the resources that parents have too, if they don't have money, right? And so I think, they do have access to Medicaid. They can get their parents taken care of. There's the COPES program in Washington State, right? If they have, I mean, I had the parent that had a ton of equity in a house, and then I had the parent that had absolutely nothing and lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. And it took a lot. Like I had to fight with social workers and hospital discharge programs to like keep my mom in the care that she needed to be in. But I absolutely just had to refuse to say, like, I cannot take her. She would not be safe at my house. I live in the woods. I've got a newborn baby. Like, this is not a safe place for myself or my mom when she is picking snakes off the wall. So, like, I really had to put my feet down. And every day they would call me and they'd say, "You're going to come pick your mom up." And I was like, "Nope. Are you going to wheel her underneath a bridge?" "Nope." "Well, I guess we're moving on then, right?" And I mean, I'm talking like, it was probably more than 90 days. They're probably close to almost like 6 months. They actually ended up putting her into a psych ward at one point. And I think that was their way of being like, well,
we'll get you.
Like, all right, put her in the psych ward. She loved the psych ward. They had like dogs visit. They had coloring contests and stuff. But like, she was in full dementia at this point. And like Lewy body dementia is a little bit different than like the other kind of dementia. It just comes on. Like Robin Williams, he had Lewy body dementia. And it confuses you between like your dream state and like what's real life. And so you start to have like these wild beliefs that you can't really get rid of. And you just can't tell the difference between like your dreams and what's real life, right? But I think for a lot of families, like, well, my only option is to take mom home and care for her, right? And for me, I didn't have the resources for it. I definitely did not have the mental capacity for it. It would have ended in a lot of resentment, but it also would have stunted my career in a time that like, I had young children at home. I was like in my mid 30s. It would have absolutely stunted my financial growth, my career, to stop what I was doing and to take care of my mom. And so there's this whole kind of like, don't create this legacy of the expectation that your family is going to have to take care of you and quit their jobs or sacrifice their life and their longevity in order to care for a parent at home. Like it just kicks the can down the road. So it's like, well, I just took 10 years off of work to care for my ailing parent, right? That's money I didn't put into my own investment, or money that I could have put into long-term care disability to care for myself down the road so my kids don't have to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And I understand that like culturally there are so many different cultures that like carry a huge importance and an honor in this, right? My ancestry DNA tells me I am not in one of those. So does my own.
I would say most of the American culture is probably not in that way. I grew up with a Spanish upbringing, so it was a little bit. Yeah. We do take care of our with us and our grandparents and that kind of thing. And I find it really important, but also you made a really good point too, financially speaking. That's never the thought when you might be willing to do it and you might be physically able to do it, but you may not be really able to do it financially. And so like that's a really hard place to be, and to recognize that like, I want to do this, I have the heart to do this, but I just can't do this.
And I unfortunately think that people just don't know how deep they are getting into it, right?
They don't.
That it's
they
like,
don't. I mean,
the aggression. I mean, just, it's a completely different person. I think you and I were talking at lunch the other day, and like, I'd have a newborn baby before I'd move a parent in with me right now.
Absolutely.
Like I'd take twin newborn babies, and I've already had that over an ailing parent in my household, because there's the thing is, a baby doesn't really know how to manipulate you. A baby doesn't know how to like argue with you. I mean, baby diapers are probably less gross than adult.
Yeah, they're not as strong. Right?
Yeah.
Like you've also got the physical part of it.
They can't drive a car. They can't run away. They can't get a silver alert. They can't send all of their money to a Nigerian prince. You know, like there's a lot of responsibility in taking care of somebody at home. And I think that in an ideal world, you're like, oh, my parent was amazing. I want to give him this gift. And then I think you don't realize how big that gift is, like, and that you're giving up a lot of your own like heart and soul. And it's okay to have bad feelings about it, and it's also okay to turn the bus around. That's the other thing that I think people feel like, that like once they've moved a parent in, that like they can't go back, right?
Oh yeah,
and make the decision.
Yes. And I think actually it's a kindness not just to yourself but to your parent.
Yes.
When you do make that decision, I think that's the like there's a big stigma against like putting parents in homes, because I told you my dad was famous for saying, well, you know what to do, just take me down the road and just, and I'm like, that's not happening. Also, I don't want to murder one charge, or to your point, to be
like I was like, no, I think my mother-in-law was just like, well, we got a plan, and I was like, your plan is you're gonna end up on Dateline. That's your plan. Like, you don't get to just like off your spouse because
right. Yes. Because they asked you to. That is not a defensible. That is not a defense. Like,
that's not
like. Yeah, like, so I'm like, figure it out, like the solution that maybe works. And by the way, these facilities, it's like being on a cruise ship. It's a cruise ship. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with this. Like, if you do the right things, if you position yourself correctly as a senior, or, as a child of a senior, right? And you position it correctly for your parents, they literally can end up on the Love Boat. Literally. And also,
I've heard of people like going on cruises just endlessly because it's cheaper than like how like
right. Is that you know what? I mean, is that an option up until they need like physical care? Like, maybe. There are year-long cruises that go all around Europe, and they literally just cater to the senior folks.
Yeah, that's amazing. For my dad, he was like, don't put me in one of those rabbit cages. And you know what? I listened to him for way longer than I should have. And we got to the point of desperation. And that's the point that you really want to try to avoid, right? Because those are the people that we're really working with, is the desperation, that it's like, you need a cash offer for your house because A, it's crumbling down. The parent needs to get into care immediately. There's no resources. Everybody's panicking. And we're just trying to like put fire out with like a little bucket, right? And so that preparation ahead of time makes such a big difference. And it also like that's the other thing is like, I'm all about autonomy. And I think that that's where it gets hard with seniors, is that like you're stripping away autonomy and their ability to make their own decisions. So it's like, my dad is, don't put me in a rabbit cage. It's like, well, I want to give him the autonomy of saying that that's not what he wants, and I'm going to support his independence and this and that. And it's like,
sure,
I think there was like a month that he like, his furnace wasn't working. He didn't want to tell anybody his furnace wasn't working. So he's just sitting in his living room like Bernie Sanders, like with mittens and a parka on in the middle of winter, because he didn't want to say that his furnace wasn't working, right? And it's like, why? He had enough money to fix it. We had the resources to fix it. He was just being stubborn and didn't want help, or like didn't, want to have to need somebody to help him, kind of thing. And so like he just dug his heels in. And so like as a single man, he's got to be like the most frustrating person to convince that he needs care, right? Because he's lived on his own without a wife for so long, and he's like, I don't need shit.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Except you do. You need heat. Yeah. You need heat.
Well, there's that. And like he had a big fall issue, right? So he was like falling, I think there was like a month. He fell every damn day, every damn night. I get calls and then on top of it, he also, and I hate to like out him on stuff, but like what I would say, the disclaimer on this is that I don't think is dealing with this as much anymore, and we've gotten it resolved. A lot of it was like he had back surgery, and the anesthesia from back surgery really like set off his brain. And so my dad has Parkinson's. with Parkinson's, it kind of created like a little bit of a dementia, right? So he would almost get like these night terrors and believe that there was somebody breaking into his house and like stealing all of his guns. And like, I mean, kind of like it was like, yeah, right. So they became, yeah. So then I'd get calls at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the of him just being like, this kid's breaking into my house again, and this and that. And it's like, he actually did have, I think it's part of it was he did have a really bad break in at one point, and then I was like, well, maybe he is getting broken into, right? But for me to answer those calls for
I was gonna, what is
my
that
sister
doing
too,
to you
my
guys?
mom.
Like,
Oh my
mentally
goodness,
and
like the
emotionally.
amount of like cortisol running through my body, right? And then we got to the point that he was like falling and he wouldn't call anybody and he'd just like suffer. And so where he's at now was so hard to get him there because he did not want to go. But like now he's got like a group of friends. He's much more social than he was when he was living in his own house. I think that he got Parkinson's pretty early, and so like he was recognizing that like he was behaving different, which made him insecure, which made him a recluse. And then you can hide a lot of things when you're a recluse, and I think a lot of seniors do that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is a lot to unpack.
I know, right?
Yeah, I'm like thinking about, I was just thinking as you were talking through your dad's situation and your current situation that you're currently going through, right? It's like, how did my dad show up? Like, my dad died a year ago, and we found out 6 weeks before he passed. And it was like all at once too, because it was like, oh, he lived in Dallas, and my sister lived in Prosper, which is about an hour north of Dallas. And of course I'm here. So during that 6 week time, I traveled there 15 times, flying back and forth, in the 6 week process. And then it was, we were realizing he wasn't eating. So we like meal prepped, like all this food. He had a live-in girlfriend who didn't live in very much, would show up and not show up. And he would have these like episodes where they found him actually in a Taco Bell. That's how we found out, in a Taco Bell bathroom floor. It was like 12 hours later, unconscious. And so that was like the first phone call to alert us that, hey, we may have a problem. And then like, it was like, oh, okay, so he's not eating. Talk about dilapidation. I went to the house. I'm like, I'm a contractor. I see all this stuff all the time. The roof needed to be replaced. The plumbing wasn't working. His refrigerator was like crapping in and out. So if you can imagine how disgusting that was, it was like all these things that we found out all at once.
Yeah.
And then it's like
that is when you get the note. Like I'm saying, like nobody's coming to tell you until
you get the 911.
Until they're on the floor of a Taco Bell bathroom.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny, but also not funny. Like, I feel like it's like I can laugh about it now because it was my situation and my scenario, but my poor dad. And let's talk about, and mind you, like, this is somebody I had recreated an established relationship with only 2 years prior, because we had gone 10 years without speaking. Because again, he had a weird girlfriend and all this other, internal trauma, right? Stuff that happens. Yeah. And so my sister and I, all of a sudden, I was talking about moving him to Seattle, moving his VA stuff to Seattle and all of this. And like, forget the last 10, 12 years and all the daddy trauma that I had. I like put that in the back door and was like trying to just like solution find what's going to happen. And I think, through our conversations and through hopefully our continued podcast, we can like unpack like also additional things that you might have to go through this process, aside from just knowing when the time is right and when you're ready
to go around it. Unfortunately, again, nobody else is coming to save your parent.
No.
And the thing is again, if you're watching this, you're probably the sibling that is at least gearing up to do it, right? That actually like is probably going to be the leader in decision making, right? Because it's just kind of how it works in families. For me, I have a very amazing supportive sister, but a lot of families, and that's where it comes down to it, that it's like humans are so messy. Like our childhood is messy. Like it's, my mom didn't really raise me. And so like when she became sick, it's like, oh, she's Alzheimer's. I'm the only one that remembers that she wasn't really around in my childhood. So I just get to carry the torch by myself. Right. And so there's so much to unpack in it. And I think that is why, like, you and I have had these conversations so many times, and it was finally time to, like, all right, let's create a community that, like, is not the sunshine and the roses and the rainbows that I feel like a lot of the senior, like, the aging community is. Right, where it's like you're talking about, like, oh, being, even the groups that I've joined on Facebook, that it's like it's more talking about being a caregiver to your parents than it is just being, for me, I'm a manager, right? Like, I manage to make sure that they have what they need, right? But I am not a daily caregiver, nor do I want to be, nor would I feel fulfilled in any way. I think I would feel resentful. It would only cause negative feelings. And so I'm glad that I made that choice in the beginning, that's how I felt, and I stuck to my guns. And there's a lot of guilt that comes with it, and there's maybe some judgment too.
Oh,
Like,
sure.
other
I'm
people might
surprised.
judge.
For
Yeah.
you to say no, I'm not picking up my mom. How difficult of like a decision that would have to be, and how much guilt. Like, what those people on the other end of the line are
yes.
making you feel like, and it isn't like they're really compassionate. That's not what they're doing. They're worried about the
Clear
money.
the bed. Yeah, they're clean.
Yeah. But like the fact that you were smart enough to actually say, like, no, this is actually what we're doing, and really, like, most people don't know to do that. They feel pressured, and they don't know that you can actually say no, and your parent is probably in a much better, safer place. It's why it's funny, I work a lot with they call them senior concierge or senior transition. It's kind of like what we are, but that is the
Well, they just move them.
yeah. They
don't actually like solve the problem.
They don't. They just move them to plan A. So the conversation at the hospital with the social workers is like, how quickly can you get this person out of this bed? I need this bed. That is the real conversation. You know what that person does? That person calls somebody like you and me, and they're like, hey, Milaina, I need this person moved out of there ASAP. They have a house, or they have this. Can you go figure out what to do? Yeah. And I'm over here trying to, like, be still thoughtful, compassionate, make sure that they are going to maximize on their profitability for their next care. Because I'm like, well, what are their options? Do they have any money? And they're like, I don't know. We just have to place them. That's the only thought that's in the back of their mind.
Yes. No. And it's, at the end of the day, like, rehab just turns into a really expensive hotel. Because and it's coming. That's the other thing that families don't realize. Like, I think, what did I say at the beginning of, you and I were meeting about this, and I was like, if your parent had a stroke today, like, boom, just fell down, they had a stroke, it's absolutely horrific, you were in, like, one of the worst, like, it's a very traumatic situation, you're upset, you're grieving, you're scared, everything, so all of your decisions are now being made out of fear and stress, right? Because you didn't make any decisions before. And so I think that there's a huge piece of that. But it's like, if your parent, had a stroke today, could not go home because they needed 24/7 care, what is your plan? And if you don't have the answer to that, now's the time to have the conversation, right? And the conversation really does give, back to the autonomy piece, the autonomy back to your parents, right? And to say that it's like, all right, if you had a stroke, what would you want us to do? And then, don't take me out in the woods. Don't put me in a rabbit cage, right? Okay, you got to move on past that it's like, okay, do you want, the other question is like, when you talk about spouses, I mean, you and I both had single parents, right? Yep. But like, when you're dealing with spouses, right, and you have somebody that, they're a devoted wife, and they're dealing with a husband that is aging, but has always been the decision maker. He's the one that has the financial control. He's the one that maintains the house, all of those things. And suddenly a wife that is not used to that kind of role is having to pick up those pieces. That's a huge shift too, right? And everybody is just like gripping at straws to try to hold on to get through that. And to have all those conversations before the stroke happens, to have all the conversations before they fall and break a hip. Because it's not, that's the thing is I think the misconception in aging is that it just happens so slowly.
Right.
And,
it is. And it's overnight.
It is overnight. And even when it is something that it's like, I mean, I look back on like the signs of like my dad's Parkinson's I probably saw it, I don't know, 5-6 years prior to when he was actually diagnosed, right? My mom's Lewy body dementia, I probably saw signs for it, shoot, I could go back probably 5 years. Like I remember her being odd at my wedding and being like, why is she so weird and social now? You know, and not really putting it all together, but I can see those things now. And it's like, those were the times that I should have had a conversation with my parents of like, well, what's your plan?
How many times, like, I recently, when I was talking to my mom about this, I was like, hey, we need to get a trust in place. And we were talking about the Medicaid thing. And she's like, well, I don't really have the money. I don't really have the money for it. Like, okay. I'm like, okay. But you have the money to go and do, and I don't want to out my mom either, but she's real vain. She's real vain. So, and she's sweet as can be, but she's, I'm like, she's like choosing other things, and I'm like, who cares about that, right? Let's talk about this, right? Or it's like, whose responsibility is it? So, should my sister and I burden the bear of the financial situation just for our peace of mind later? That's kind of where we're at now. We're kind of like, F it, like. I'm going to do that now so that I don't have to worry about. I'm like, you can pay me back later, and you will with your mini mansion that you keep saying you're going to leave to us, which
Right.
is not the case. But like, whatever, right? At this point, it's like I just want to make sure, because I've had such severe like situations with other clients and such sadness with their kids or family and arguing
Yeah.
and all of these things, that like I really just want to avoid all of that from the beginning. And so, but the conversation gets pushed, like the can keeps getting kicked even in my own situation. So it's like, as we have these conversations and it's like, no, you just need to put a date on the calendar. In fact, I had sent a little email to my attorney and was like, hey, start the paperwork. Here's the information. Here's this. And I'm like, let's just like, I'll, make a payment plan, do whatever. But like, we have to get started somewhere. And the other piece too is like, and I think this is stuff we can help with guidance on, is giving like an actual list of like when to know that things are ready. There's an actual guidance list. We're not just like saying this, like it feels very vague what we're saying,
Yeah.
but we're just talking about like real stories, real conversations, real things that are happening day to day. And things that you should just start to be aware of. But there are actionable items that you can take in order to move to the next phase of like prepping and preparation, because it's so, so, so important.
Yeah. And we have put together top 5 conversation pieces to have with your parent that we'll give away for free. You just have to get into our landing page and we'll get that out to you. But that'll give you kind of like the starting points of conversations to have with your parents early on, so that the other part of this is like, it comes from a place of like love and respect too. I think that's the other hard thing, that it's like, I mean, I have, they're not, I guess they're teenagers at this point, but it's like I have to have the hard conversations with my kids about like how to be a kind friend, what puberty is, all of their very uncomfortable conversations, right? But like that comes from a place of love, and that comes from a place of like wanting them to have the best future. And doing that conversation with your parent is the exact same thing. The toughness part is because it comes from love. That's why it's hard. And to sit down and have those conversations also acknowledges and respects their wishes in a genuine way. And it's okay for you to say, no, you don't have the option of not being I'm going to put you in a rabbit cage. But I promise it's not going to be, you know what I mean?
It's going to be first class.
Let's define what the important parts of the rabbit cage are,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't need to be near me. Doesn't need to be you know what I mean? Doesn't need to be near this sibling. Doesn't need to be, those are the things, those are the types of wishes that you can honor in it. And I think they're hard conversations to have,
food,
for sure.
It's healthcare advocacy.
Yeah, I know, because it acknowledges aging, and of course, it's like my kids will just say I'm 42 for the next like 3 or 4 years, hopefully. Like you don't know your mom's age.
I still don't. I mean, because to me, she still is this same fiery, red-headed Irish lady that
I love it. Yeah.
like is always going to be there. But the reality is she is aging, and things are changing. And my sister and I are getting older, and we have our own. I have adult children now, so it's like, oh, I'm also reaching this age where it's like I have to start thinking and preparing. And because I have so much. I've seen so much of it, witnessed so much of it, that I don't want to leave my kids with so much of a burden. And I mean, that's, part of the preparation too, is like, we're in this generation where people are really coming into this minimalist phase of like not having as much stuff. Well, the baby boomer generation and Gen X we're kind of like, oh, we just I like can't help but like self hoard all that stuff. So it's like a lot of stuff to go
Oh
through.
yeah, I mean you get like you have like legacy cottage cheese containers. Like my grandma handed me down some cottage cheese containers for food storage, and they're probably made with lead in
I
it or
mean,
something, right? You know what I mean? It's funny though because like you had like the Depression era too that like
Yeah.
just kept everything and reused everything. We almost like swung the other direction that like we buy everything and keep everything and don't reuse anything, but we also still keep it.
Right. Yeah. What is it you that says you have a storage container? Because, like, I still have a storage container. I do. Of my dad's stuff. It was, like, the things that, like, I got my sister to, like, true story. I got her to let me have a junk removal twice. And this is just because, like, she had a really hard time with it. I mean, we both had a hard time with it, but, like, we handle things differently. Like, I'm somebody who's actionable and ready to get things done. And it's probably because of my experience. I was like, let's call the junk removal company and pull them up. And I literally went through the house and she about had a fit. And this is, like, my sister who I love and we're best friends and we have a great relationship. She was like, don't you care about she didn't want to throw away his torn up lazy boy that had an Afghan quilt that was literally torn like a baby, like just torn up. And I was like, there's filling coming out of it. I'm like, and I'm sure it smells like farts. Yeah. It's like, let's get to the reality of what.
You're gonna move it into your house,
right?
Like, are you gonna actually sit in it?
Right, like so she sits there and she's crying about it, and I'm like trying to be, I want to be sympathetic, but also I'm like. I know how he used to rage fart. So I'm like, I was like halfway like laughing, halfway trying to like, but I'm like, literally we had to just like, you just have to like you just have to start moving along and like get.
What are the prized possessions?
Yeah, like,
that's a great conversation to have. Like, what are the
what's
prized
important for
possessions
you?
of your parents that they want to pass?
Yeah, exactly. What do you want me to keep? Like, what is it that you think is really valuable that you think I should? Because it always comes down to money. They always think that something costs so much more. Oh, and also everybody like good furniture is good furniture. And listen, I'm somebody who buys from consignment, so I do believe that. But some furniture is not meant to be bought and no one wants it.
The antique market
is suffering.
Is gone. It's basically gone
Yeah,
at this point. I mean, the cost to move stuff is like...
It is. So, like, the cost of estate sales, I'm like, yeah, you can have one, but is it going to be worth your time? The worst one is when we get these, deferred maintenance houses that are practically falling apart and... yeah, and we're having to clean it. But that's enough. That is one for another episode that we can go down.
4 or 5 urns I just cleaned out of the hoarder one that I have. So yeah. No, it's a lot of that's the start of what we're talking about. This is, I think, a huge project for you and I that we continue to build on and carry through. And it really comes from our heart and our experience of like dealing with not only our families, but dealing with other families that don't have the support of their kids. And so again, like I said, if you will hit our landing page, we'll give you a link and we'll get you the top 5 like conversation starters to have with your parents for free. And then we also would love to plug you into our senior transitions. That is basically our workhorse, right? So senior transitions team really can handle basically any problem that you're going through, that it's like, I need the attorney. We got the attorney already. Like, we've interviewed them. We have figured out the good ones. We're investors, so we're very like financially like driven as far as like making those choices and finding the right one that like knows exactly what they're doing instead of just pretending. Senior transitions team can also, like, even if you're dealing with a parent that all their money's wrapped up in their house and they need the money to move into assisted living, nobody really has the cash to front for, like, usually it's like down payment and a couple of like the first month's rent or whatever. We can actually front the capital for that to get somebody moved into where they need to go and then deal with the house on the back end. And so we really developed kind of all the solutions to it first, because senior transitions team really came first. And then I realized, and we both have realized in our conversations, just how much the back end of it is, of the emotional part of it. So that's really what this, podcast, YouTube is about. And we'll just continue to break those down weekly.
Yeah, if you guys have liked the content, I would love it if you would subscribe to our channel. And of course, if you have questions that you'd like us to address through a series of podcasts that we're going to start putting out, we'd love to be able to do that for you and help you transition and help your parent move into their next phase of life.
Yep. All right. And another thank you to Neo Mortgage for hosting us in their lovely little podcast room.